Mr. Joof, welcome back to the Commission.
Thank you.
I would like to remind you that you're still under an obligation to tell the truth.
I understand.
Prior to the break, we talked about a number of incidents, including Gamsu's response to what happened to Ms. Bintamane. Similarly, you told us earlier that it was your vice president, Mr. Alaji S. Dabo, who was involved in Gamsu's response regarding Ibrahim Abari. However, you mentioned that you were involved in one particular meeting concerning Mr. Bari. Can you tell us about that meeting?
Yes, it was the meeting that was held at Gambia College in the principal's office after the strike action in Brikama. Now, I was invited to the meeting. In fact, I was informed of the meeting by the vice president. So I went to Brikama. This must have been around the 25th of March, and the meeting was held at the principal's office. And the service chiefs were there, the IGP, the deputy, and some other officials of the security systems were there. And I remember fully well the chief
prior to continuing, Mr. Joof, can we just clarify the identities of the people who were present, particularly from the security sector? So to the extent that you know, give us titles as well as names. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, the IGP was there. The IGP who was Rex King. The deputy IGP was there, Sankum Baji, and the chief officer, Mr. Roger Bakuri, was also there. There were some others, but these were the most important because the Brikama incident, you know, from the fire service point of view, was very important because because the IGP was the chief of the fire service unit, and according to his explanation later on, he was personally involved in the vehicles that were procured abroad and brought into the country. He told us he was personally involved in bringing those vehicles into the country. So he was, I think he was emotional about them. But what precipitated the Brikama incident, the demonstration, was the very abrupt announcement on radio that Ibrahim Abari's death was through natural causes, and this was as a report that was in his post-mortem. So when I went to the meeting, I found them there, and I had to respond to an effort by the security forces to the IP and his deputies to blame the students for the demonstration. I very well remember, after having heard from all of them, I told them that I was the one who instructed the vice president to move in and provide leadership to that demonstration, to be part of the leadership to that demonstration. But it was not a demonstration that was organized on our behalf. It was not. But I remember classifying it as a spontaneous demonstration. Spontaneous in the sense that at that point in time, for what I knew, there was no prior planning. There was no specific planning for the demonstration. The information the vice president was that these people were going out on a demonstration, and what should we do about it? And I told him to move ahead, to move in and provide leadership for the demonstration so that it would be controlled and things would not go out of hand.
So, Mr. Joof, just to interrupt you there, yeah. Regarding the Brikama demonstrations, you were not present, correct? It was the Vice President, Alhaji S. Dabo, who was there on your behalf. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So I want to focus more on the meeting that you had with these security chiefs at the Gambia College Brikama campus. You mentioned that the purpose of the meeting was concerning information about Mr. Ibrahim Barry, in particular the post-mortem, the conclusions of the post-mortem that was conducted, which stated that he died of natural causes. So that was the purpose of the meeting, is that correct?
It had something to do with that, but only in the sense that the announcement that was made on Radio Gambia led to a spontaneous demonstration in Brikama. And so their reason for that meeting actually was to redress the situation in Brikama. That is, for them, it was to stop these students from going ahead with anything like that action again.
So the purpose of the security chiefs was to avoid any subsequent demonstrations.
Exactly.
And during that meeting, you mentioned that the IGP talked about vehicles that he had procured himself, and that he appeared to be more focused on that issue rather than the issue of the demonstrations and the incidents that led up to the demonstrations. Is that correct?
Exactly, that's correct.
Can you tell us if
and that was his focus.
Can you tell us if, from your side, from the GAMSU side, whether you put forward any kind of demands or made any requests during that particular meeting?
No, what we did, or what I in particular at that meeting, was to debunk the accusation that the students were responsible for that demonstration. I explained to them that it could not be blamed on the students because up to that point we had no information that the postmortem had actually taken place. One, and two, if the announcement was not made, then the demonstration would never have taken place.
Can you tell us what was the outcome of that meeting? How did it end?
It ended like that. After I refused to accept responsibility for that meeting on behalf of the students, and I explained to them that if the announcement was not made on radio, it would never have taken place. So if they want to blame anyone, they should start going to Radio Gambia to find out how they got that information. Then that was how they did.
And after that meeting, I assume that negotiations continued to take place with the authorities concerning the incidents of Ms. Mane and Mr. Barry. Is that correct?
Yes, by around that time we came up with a letter of demands, because up to that point, after that incident, it looked like what they were engaged in doing was to control the students, to stop the students from going ahead with any other action. but they were not actually doing what we were asking them to do. So to be specific in terms of demands, we wrote a letter of demands. And
do you recall when that letter was written? Because I'm trying to get a chronology here of the events.
Yes, that letter, I remember the exact date, but it was actually after Eid and after the meeting at Brikama.
So perhaps prior to that, did you at any point meet with the Minister of Interior at that time?
I up to that point, the only time that I met with I think the Minister of Interior was also at the Brikama meeting. Yes, that was where I met with him. But up to that point, I did not meet with the Minister of Interior. I met the Minister of Interior after having written the letter of demands and submitted them and submitted it to the IGP and the copies to the respective stakeholders.
And do you recall at any point trying to seek higher intervention into the matters that were taking place at the time? So did you at any point contact someone? Please tell us about that.
Yes, because I have already alluded to, we had good relations, we had good liaisons with the president through the chairman of the July 22nd Youth Movement. So after submitting the letter of demand, hello?
I think we lost you for a few seconds. Who was the chairman of the July 22nd movement?
It was Omar Joof. Now, after submitting the letter of demand and the copies, the letter of demands was addressed to the IGP, the Director General of Mr. Rex King, and there were calls for the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Education, and the Secretary General Office of the President.
Can you tell us about your demands? What were your requests? What type of demands did you make?
The demands were basically around generally to ensure, one was to ensure that justice was done in regard of the two cases. That's that the person responsible for the rape was identified and taken before the law, or that those responsible for the alleged torture of Ibrahim Bari were identified and taken before the law. And we thought that because the community of Brikama knew those who were directly involved in Ibrahim Bari's torture, they should be transferred from that station in order to preempt any violence or to preempt their presence provoking any form of or kind of violence. We did ask for that as well. But generally, yes, it was about ensuring that the environment around Brikama was pacified by removing those who were responsible for the girls, for Ibrahim's torture, and making sure that they are eventually taken to court. And also moving ahead to identify the person or persons who were responsible for the rape of Binta Mane, to ensure that she was also taken, they were also, he or they were also taken to court.
Can you tell us what happened after your group, the GAMSU leadership, made this list of demands? What was the reaction of the authorities?
Now, after we made, as I submitted the letters to these individuals, then I called Omar Joof and informed him to inform the president. We had submitted letters of demand to the IGP. Then it was the president himself who told Baba Joof to go to the material and discuss the issues highlighted there with him.
Which president
So
are you
that very
referring
day,
to?
former President Jammeh.
Please continue. What happened thereafter?
We submitted all those letters, and then I went. And after the information came back that I should go to Usman Baji, and with a copy of the letter to discuss it with him. Then I suggested to him to make efforts towards ensuring that is the convening of a meeting between us and the IGP so that we could discuss those issues that were among the demands.
What was Mr. Baji's response to the information that you provided to him, as well as the request that you made concerning meeting with the IGP?
After having explained that to him, I left him there, and I went to the Ministry of Education also. He promised he was going to do something about it. And then we did not hear from them for a number of days. Then one day, I was informed verbally by Benjamin Jammeh. Benjamin was a colleague at the University Extension Program. Then he was an officer at the Inspector General's office. It was Benjamin Jammeh who informed us that the Inspector General was prepared to have discussions with us. In fact, it was the following day. I remember when he was delivering the information, I had gone with some other students from the university to a funeral of one of our colleagues. I think it was Lawrence Gomez. Yes. This guy, we went to his family house, and we met with Benjamin Jammeh there, and he delivered the news to us that the Inspector General of Police wanted to have discussions with us the next day.
So just to be clear, you sent a letter, official letter, making a request, and the response came from a colleague of yours verbally. Is that correct?
Verbally, yes. It was verbal. It was not written.
Prior to that, though, you said after you left Mr. Baji's office, Mr. Usman Baji, you went to the Ministry of Information. Did you meet the same three people that you've been mentioning so far?
I mean the Ministry of Education.
Indeed. Thank you for that clarification.
I went there again to give them updates on what we were doing and what had been done up to that point.
So did you finally meet with the Inspector General of Police following this verbal response?
Yes, I immediately I got the information. I went away to call my colleagues and so that we could meet in Banjul the following day at police headquarters. We went to Banjul the following day. We met and we went into a conference hall. We introduced ourselves, those who were with me. I think it was myself, Omar Joof, the Vice President, Alaji S. Davo, the Information Secretary, Alaji Kamara, the Secretary General, Senabu J, the Assistant Secretary General, Daniel Davis. There was Alaji Alu Dabo, the President of the St. Mary's University Extension Program Students Union. There was Aliu Khan, also the President of Gambia College Students Sub-Union, Brikama Campus. And there was a Treasurer, Alassane Cisse. And yes, basically these were the people on my side And on their side, the IGP was there, Rex King. The deputy IGP was there, Mr. Sankum Baji. Commissioner Tamsir Jase was there. Commissioner Mamudu Njai was there. The commander of the Serious Crimes Unit, Mr. Landin Tatin Baji, was also there, basically, yes. But after we introduced ourselves again, the IGP started talking about the vehicles that were destroyed at Brikama instead of the substantive issues we had mentioned on our letter of demand. Because, yes, when he started talking about the vehicles, the destruction of the vehicles, and how much efforts he had to make to put vehicles into the country, people on my side started to respond angry because to them he was equating the life of one of us with those vehicles. So in fact, I had to intervene to maintain the peace so that we could continue the discussions. But after Pam had returned to the room, he said he was leaving. He said he was going to the airport because the president was either coming or going away, and so he had to be at the airport. I very well remember telling him to stay because I told him, I am sure if the president is able to advise you, at this instant he will tell you to stay and negotiate with us. But he refused to negotiate with us and left on the pretext that he was going to the airport to meet the president. So the moment he left the room, all the other officers who were there also got up and left. But except two, Mr. Landin Tatin Baji came to us and asked us to go to his office, and Mr. Commissioner Tamsir Jase also came there. So these two told us to come back the next day. Landin Tatin Baji was very, very much frustrated. He expressed his frustration to us, and I could remember him even saying, "Are they trying to undermine the government there? Are they trying to undermine Jammeh's government?" Because it was the attitude of those officers in that room was terribly disappointing. They almost put us in the very difficult position of being the adults. That is exactly what took place. So we agreed to come the next day.
Prior to moving on to the next day, Mr. Joof, do you recall the date when that particular meeting took place?
No, I cannot remember those meetings, but it was immediately. It was the day after the meeting with the Inspector General, the initial meeting with the meeting with the Inspector General.
And this would have been after the Eid holidays, is that correct?
Yes, it was around the Eid yes.
Are we still talking about the end of March, or do you think that
yes, it was still the end of March, because the deadline in the demands letter, the deadline was the 7th of April. So the next day I went to Landin Tatin Baji's office, that is the commander of the Serious Crimes Unit, I went with the Secretary of Information, Alaji Kamara, and the Deputy Secretary General, Daniel Davis. Now, again, we went with our copy of the letter so that we could have discussions on the content of the letter. When we arrived at Landin Tatin Baji's office, he called the Inspector General of Police and informed him that the students, we were there to have discussions with him. But instead of calling us up, he sent the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Sankumbaye, down to talk to us. In fact, when Deputy Inspector General of Police, Sankumbaye, came, he asked us, he said the Inspector General of Police would like to know what we wanted him for. You know, I responded, I said, we have come to discuss the content of our letter of demands with him. So Sankumbaji went up to deliver that information. After Sankumbaji went, the Inspector General of Police did not come down again, but he sent the Chief Fire Officer, Roger Bakurin, down to us. So that was another drama. That was another situation of terrible disappointment for us, because the moment Roger Bakurin came, he stood in front of us, put his arms across his shoulder, like his chest, as if trying to bully us with his muscles. I literally had to get up from where I was sitting. I moved up to very close to him, an arm's length from him. I started to massage his ego. I told him, you are one of the most important officers in this country. We are students. We are young people. So you should not behave like this towards us. You should show better example to us. And you could see his body changing. You could see his muscles relaxing and his face muscle relaxing. And then he smiled. And then I sat back, and then we started having discussions with him. And we went over the content of the letter. And I fully remember he agreed that those officers in Brikama, there was plan in the pipeline for them to be relocated. Okay, and I think he agreed that that they would do their best to make sure that justice was done. So I asked him, because the demands were 5 in number, and our negotiating strategy was, if more than 50% of the demands are met, then we will allow the negotiations to continue. We will give chance to negotiations. So when we got to that point, I said to him, okay, can we reach an agreement? Can we commit ourselves to an agreement that is to be signed and documented? He said no, he would not sign an agreement with us, and he would not commit himself to an agreement with us. That was another point of frustration. I did my best. I tried to convince him. We all tried to convince him. Although Tatin Baji was present there, but he did not say anything. This was just between us, myself and my two colleagues, and Roger Bakurin. We could have had a breakthrough at that point, and everything, nobody would think about a demonstration, but a continuation of the negotiations. But he flatly refused to commit himself to an agreement with us.
You mentioned the previous day that Commissioner Tamsir Jase was also part of the discussion to have a meeting the next day. Was he present?
No, he was not present the next day. He was also there to encourage us to come back, to keep up the negotiations. He also did that.
So after this meeting with the head of the fire service, Mr. Roger Bakari, what happened next? Because we understand that your letter of demands had a deadline of 7th April.
Yes, we went away, and then students had already returned from the Eid vacation, and obviously we had already made a press conference, and it was one of this were some of the burning news, then the rape case and the death of Ibrahim Barry. So especially among the students, the news was going around, and our membership started asking us, what is going to be done? What is going to be done? What do we do? What do we do? But we kept informing them that we still had matters under control. Up to that point, even after that meeting, we were still committed to resolve these issues through negotiations. Up to the 7th, when the 7th came, there was no movement from their side.
Mr. Joof?
Yeah.
Prior to addressing what happened on the 7th, you mentioned that there was a press conference. Which press conference are you talking about?
Oh, we had a press conference after the Brikama student incident and after the delivery of the letter of demands. We had a press conference at it was at the Canifing Estate Youth Center. The purpose of that press conference, it was like a press briefing. We thought we should inform the population. We should tell them exactly what was happening and exactly what we had done up to that point. And but explain the entire scenario to them, to explain our frustrations and everything, and also explain our determination to still push ahead and make sure that justice is done.
So up until the 7th of April, were there any discussions concerning a potential demonstration, a potential student demonstration?
I think those were rumors, but on our side, as an executive, we did not discuss. Up to that point, we did not discuss a demonstration. We had not yet decided on a demonstration because I said we were still committed to resolving the issues through negotiations.
So the Commission has received information to the effect that, evidence to the effect that a demonstration was being planned. So I want to know from your perspective, when was the first time that the issue of a demonstration was discussed?
The first time a demonstration was discussed was on the 9th of April, the day before we went out. Although before that, we had asked the Secretary General to get a police permit, potentially for a demonstration.
So let's focus on that issue. Let's talk about the meeting where that occurred. This request to the Secretary General of GAMSU to request a permit. Can you tell us when that meeting occurred and who was present and what was the content of that meeting?
The meeting was a meeting of the Central Executive Committee, and it's just the usual members like the President, the Secretary General. They were all there. And that was before the 7th. It was thought that with the way things were moving, there was the possibility of a demonstration. So the Secretary General was instructed to get a permit potentially for a demonstration, but we had not decided to go out yet.
When you say there was the possibility of a demonstration, by whom? Who would have instigated such a demonstration?
Obviously, if there was going to be a demonstration, it was going to be by GAMSU.
So your leadership was requesting that the Secretary General request a permit on the understanding that you could potentially hold a demonstration. Is that correct?
Exactly. Potential, yes, but we had not decided to go out then.
And this request for a permit, in that case, was any date given, since you've just told us that you hadn't decided to actually hold a demonstration?
I cannot remember any date. No, I cannot remember that. But I can assure you that there were rumors for a demonstration, that a demonstration was going on, was going to. Let me, if you don't mind, can I digress a bit?
Well, we don't have much time, so please do briefly, and then we will come back to the meetings and then move on.
Yes, because I also heard about a demonstration. I also heard about a demonstration. You know, because what was happening, result of our strategy of quarantine. In spite of it, so we developed this this practice of, whenever the July 22nd youth movement needed me, they would tell him to come and call me to a meeting, invite me to a meeting with them. I remember exactly on the 7th, we had he called me to their office, and I went there at night and had a meeting with them. And they were telling me that they understood that there was going to be a demonstration. I said, I do not know of any demonstration, and we do not plan any demonstration as of to date. You know, and yeah, that was it.
Okay, so
I have also heard about that demonstration, but we did not plan a demonstration at that point.
So your testimony is that up until the 7th, no decision had been made to actually stage a demonstration.
Up until the 9th, there was no decision. There was no decision for a demonstration.
But prior to the 7th, the possibility of a demonstration had been discussed, and the Secretary General had been requested to seek a permit. That's as far as you recall.
Yes, because that is all informed by our standard practice of our normal modalities that we take to organize a demonstration as students.
Well, we won't belabor the point because we need to move on. What happened on the 7th of April? Their meeting of the Central Executive.
No, I cannot remember a meeting of the Central Executive on the 7th. There was none. That was a Friday. We had a meeting on the 9th.
Can you tell us about the meeting on the 9th of April?
The meeting of the 9th of April is where a demonstration was decided, because it was at that meeting that we factor in all the information we had up to that point. And basically, there was no movement on the side of the Inspector General of Police. It was also on that day that we officially put on the table the information that the Secretary General had not obtained a permit, and also the information that it had been arranged for us to have a meeting with the Vice President that Monday.
So let's take it step by step. You mentioned that that was the first time that you were officially informed that the Secretary General could not get a permit. Was a reason given as to why a permit could not be obtained?
I cannot remember a reason given. The first time she told me about not having obtained a permit was when she came over to my house. We live across the street from each other, and she told me that she could not get a permit. But unfortunately, she did not attend the meeting on the 9th also. So we could not get more information from her.
So your recollection is that she didn't attend the meeting on the 9th Because we have received
No.
evidence suggesting that she did. So I want to know what you recall.
She was not. No, she was not there.
Okay,
She did
let's
not
talk about the meeting on the
9th.
9th. You mentioned the issue of the vice president. What information did you receive concerning the vice president? And which vice president are we referring to?
Yes, the vice president of the Republic then, Isatunjai Sedi. Through one of our members, Aliu Khan of the Brikama subunion, contact had been made with Lamin Kaba Bajo for that meeting. It was Lamin Kaba Bajo who facilitated that meeting. So, and it was arranged for that very Monday. So when we got together, we factor in those two, the fact that there was no permit and the fact that we had to go to this meeting. So we opted to go for what we call a limited peaceful demonstration.
And what did that entail?
It entailed organizing the students outside GTTI and then taking them onto GTTI premises and leaving them there while some members of the executive proceeded to Banjul for a meeting at the vice president's office.
So in other words, the actual demonstration would only take place following the outcome of the meeting in Banjul with the vice president of the Republic.
Now, it was like this. The demonstration at the stationing of the students at GTTI was to give us backup, and so that when we come from the vice president's office, whatever we came with, whatever information we came with, could be rapidly disseminated amongst the student population by those in attendance.
So having come to the conclusion on the 9th that a permit had not been obtained, that there was the possibility of meeting the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia on that Monday, can you just tell us whether this information was communicated to the students in terms of the limited demonstration that you've just told us about?
No. Our idea of a demonstration is the surprise factor is very important, because during that time, if you announce a demonstration beforehand that you are actually going out for a demonstration, it can be nipped in the bud. The leaders could be arrested. So the idea of informing the students was not part of our agenda. Our agenda was to go out on the street. When the students arrive in their buses, we inform them that we were going, today is the day we want to demonstrate. That was the idea. But would you
agree that the fact that there were rumors of a demonstration, because you disagree that a demonstration was planned, the fact that there were rumors of a demonstration took away the element of surprise, essentially?
That was, yes, that's we decided that one of the reasons we decided to have it immediately, because if we had decided on the date and make it any day or 2 days further, the possibility of all of us being arrested was there. So we decided to have it the next day.
So my understanding is that we have received testimony that this information of the demonstration itself was broadcasted to the students. But your testimony is that this was not the case. It was not communicated to the students, as far as you know.
No, it was not. That you don't do that. You don't do that because you're just going to get yourself arrested.
So let's talk about what happened on the 10th of April itself. Tell us what happened that morning.
That morning, I actually went to the site that is outside GTTI with the Secretary General of GAMSU, Seinabu J. The site said we live not far away from each other. were the first to arrive, and after we arrived, then other members of the central executive and other student leaders started to arrive in twos and threes. And
do you recall what time you arrived?
I think myself and the Secretary General arrived there around 5 o'clock. We arrived there very early. Yes, in the morning, 5 a.m. And because the idea is the first buses that fly into the first school buses that fly into Banjul from the combos normally arrive at that end by 6:30. And the idea was when the first bus arrived, you get on the bus, talk to the students, tell them what you were up to, and convince them to come off of the bus. That was what we did. We convinced some, and they got off the buses, but we could not convince some. They went into Banjul until that's what we were doing. Yeah. Organizing the students before the paramilitary police arrived.
So before we get into when the paramilitary officers arrived, I just want to take you back to something that we just talked about concerning the request, the agreement to meet with the Vice President of the Gambia. Do you recall if there were any demands from your side, GAMSU, concerning that meeting? Were there any conditions that were placed in anticipation of that meeting?
I cannot remember any conditions.
So let's go back to the issue of the 10th of April when the PIU arrived. Please give us a step-by-step account of what occurred, as well as who you recall seeing and what they were doing.
Now, we were already there, and I just want to inform you that in our preparations, we had decided that when the PIU or any security officers came to the site, they should talk with the Vice President. So and I was to head the demonstrations. So we were doing that, and the Vice President was there, standing, waiting for them when they arrived. And the man in charge of them, the officer commanding them, I think it was Momodu Sise. He came, hello? Okay.
We can hear you. So you said the officer commanding the PIU at the time was a certain Momodu Sise. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Please
so
continue.
he came straight to me and wanted me to go aside and have discussions with him. I said to him, no, go to that man and talk to him. He is the one you are supposed to talk to. But I don't know why, but he refused to go to the Vice President and have discussions with him.
So can you tell us how you knew that the person who was commanding the PIU was called Momodu Sise?
Because that was his name. I had known him already by then.
The question is, how do you know that? So how did you know him? In which context?
I had people calling him.
So people referred to him by his name, and that's what made you know his name. How did you know that he was the one commanding the PIU? You told us that he's the one who approached you to speak to you, but how did you know he was commanding?
Yes, he was the one in charge of the contingent that came there. He was the one leading them.
What led you to the conclusion that he was the one leading them?
He was the one who came forward to try to speak to me.
Is there any other?
The rest were standing behind.
Is there any other factor that led you to conclude that he was the one leading them, apart from that?
Besides his stripes, the stripes on his uniform, yeah.
Tell us about his stripes. What did you observe?
I think he was. I think he was. He was an officer, unlike the others. He had an officer's uniform.
Can you just tell us briefly what the difference is between his uniform and the uniform of the other PIU officers? Oh, sorry, the
His was
PIU men.
His was light green, and theirs was black.
Was the entire uniform black?
Of the others, yes.
Yeah.
Their helmets and everything were black. Yes.
You mentioned helmets.
But he did
were
not
they
have
carrying?
he did. Yeah, they were carrying helmets. They were carrying shields. They had sticks. I think they also had guns. Yes.
Do you recall what kind of guns?
I think they must have been rifles, but I don't know much about guns, so I wouldn't know what kind of guns they were. But later I saw Mobudu Sise with a pistol.
That's fair enough. So you said that Momodu Sise, the officer who was leading the PIU, as far as you could tell, spoke to you, but you told him to go and speak to the vice president of GAMSU, Mr. Alaji S. Dabo, but he refused to do so. What happened next?
Yeah. We were there, and then later he came back. He left me where I was. He left me where I was speaking, and went back to his men. Then, shortly afterwards, they asked us to disperse.
Up until that point, did the PIU men do anything to your group apart from just telling you to disperse?
They were standing there, and while he was talking, they were standing there. They did not do anything up to that point.
So after you were you were told to disperse, what happened next?
After we were told to disperse, he counted, I think he counted, and then after nobody, and then they started attacking us.
When you say they started attacking us, can you tell us what exactly you observed? What did they do?
Yeah, they came, they arrested me immediately, and they arrested the vice president, they arrested the information secretary and other members of the student leadership around with us, and then started beating the students who were there with their truncheons.
Do you recall around what time this occurred?
That must have been around 8 o'clock or even before 8.
Apart from Momodu Sise, who you've mentioned, were there any other senior officers or authority figures present at the scene?
No, at that point there were only members of the PIU, Police Intervention Unit, and there was about 25 of them.
You told us that they started to arrest a number of people, yourself, the Vice President, Information Secretary. Can you tell us, and then you also mentioned that they were beating other students. Can you tell us whether you were beaten when you were being arrested, or you were merely arrested while other students were being beaten?
They just surrounded me and arrested me. But they started a running battle with the rest of the students there as I was being arrested.
So let's focus on the beatings. Can you tell us what you could observe? How they were beating the students, whether you observed any injuries? Tell us a bit more about that.
Actually, the vice president was injured at that point. While we were being arrested, he was beaten, and yes, he sustained injuries at that instant.
Can you tell us on which part of his body he sustained injuries?
I cannot, the upper part of his body, whether it was around his arms or, but I cannot remember exactly, but he was actually bleeding.
Did you observe any other injuries at that time?
I cannot remember. I cannot remember that, but I can remember that of the vice president. Vice president.
You said that the PIU were beating the students. Um,
Hmm.
how did the students react while that was going on?
The students were running backwards and picking stones and throwing them at the PIU with them also. Because it was a large number of students.
And you told us that there were about 25 PIU officers, is that correct?
Exactly, yes.
So you were arrested. Can you tell us what happened to you and the others who were arrested?
I was and we were taken to the headquarters of the police intervention unit, and we were kept there, and they were beating us continuously. Um, and
Can you tell us about
the
those beatings? Do you recall any of
yeah,
the officers who were involved in beating you and your group?
I cannot remember them. They were mainly junior officers. I didn't know any one of them, and I cannot remember any. Yeah,
Can you tell us what they were using to beat you and your colleagues?
they were using truncheons. They were using head. I mean, like the butts of their guns. They were hitting us. They were kicking us, and I very well remember they have a group of girls there whom they also arrested. They made them sat down and they were walking on their legs.
At that point, while the PIU officers were beating you as well as your colleagues, including the women who were present, did they say anything while these beatings were going on?
They were basically insulting us, telling, basically insulting us. Yes, that was it. They were just insulting us and beating us. And I can remember they went through my pockets, and I had a copy of the letter of demands which they took from me as well.
While this was going on, was there any senior official present at the PIU headquarters while the beatings were going on?
Inside the building, no, I did not see any officer inside the building there.
And where the students were gathered and being beaten inside the PIU premises, were you all in the same area, or were people in different locations or different parts of?
We were in the same room, but all of us, all the men were put on one side and the girls were taken to the other side of the same room.
So you were
we
all
could
in the
see each
same
other.
room, though?
Yes, we were all in the same room.
And from what you've said, you don't recall any senior officer being present. Can you tell us for how
No.
long these beatings lasted? Do you recall the duration at all?
We were there for 1 hour plus. Then Usman Baji came.
Were you being beaten
Now,
for this entire period, or?
yes, we were being beaten continuously, non-stop. We were being beaten continuously.
And do you recall some of the injuries that, that people could have sustained as a result of those beatings for that duration of time?
And it's only that of the vice president that I can remember.
What about yourself? Do you recall any injuries that you may have sustained?
No, I did not sustain bruises or cuts. But I did have strains. Like afterwards, I did suffer my strains on my arms, because sometimes while they were trying to hit me, I would put up my hands and they would hit me on my arms. Yes, I did. Afterwards, I had strains on that, but I did not have cuts and bruises.
During these beatings, was Momodu Sise present, the one who you said
No,
was
he was
leading
not.
the PIU?
No, he was not there. He was not in the building.
You told us at some point someone came. Please tell us about that.
Yes, yes. It was later that at that point that Mohamed Usman Bayi, the Secretary of State for the Interior, came in. And when he came in, he asked for us to be released. And surprisingly, he also knew about the meeting that was going to take place at the Vice President's office. So he mentioned it, and the idea was to go to the Vice President's office from right away from detention. And we were to use his vehicle. But incidentally, there wasn't enough room in the vehicle for all of us. And I remember I had already got onto it. Then I came out. I wanted the vice president to be in the vehicle because of his condition. So the vice president went in my place, and I walked with Usman Baji to the gate of the PIU headquarters.
I just want to make sure that I clarify a point. When Mr. Usman Baji arrived, were you still being beaten or not by the PIU officer?
Of course, when he arrived, they stopped beating us. That was the point at which they stopped beating us.
What I'm driving at is whether he in fact witnessed the beatings or they ceased just before he entered the room.
He could have, because they were just randomly beating us. It's possible that he saw some of the beatings because he just appeared there in front of us.
So you said after the vehicle left with the vice president of GAMSU and some other members, you walked with Mr. Usman Baji. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, the vehicle did not leave. Actually, what he was trying to do is to get another vehicle, which could take the rest of us that were not on that could not be on his vehicle. So that was how we came out. When we got to the gate, we found there was like pandemonium. There was it was actually at that point that I saw Momodu Sise again with a pistol firing in the air with his pistol. And there were students running all over the place, and PIU officers running after them. At that point, in fact, what was happening is PIU officers were also taking stones and throwing them at the students.
So you mentioned that at that point, Momodu Sise was again with a pistol firing. I want to clarify, when was the first time that you heard gunshots on the 10th of April?
After that one, or before that one?
Before that one. I want to know if that was the first time that you heard gunshots on the 10th of April.
Yes, that was the first time I had live ammunition being discharged, because I saw him doing it.
Let's make a distinction here. Was that the first time that you heard any gunshot, or was that the first time that you heard live ammunition being used?
That was the first time I had live ammunition being used, because they were throwing tear gas also at the students.
So prior to that, did you hear of any shots that did not involve live ammunition?
Basically tear gas, yes. I had some.
When was the first time that you saw the tear gas? And
that was while I was coming out of the PIU headquarters.
Okay, so now that's clear. That was the first time that you saw the tear gas and then you heard the shots. Can you tell us what happened when Momodu Sise was shooting his weapon. Where was the shooting directed?
He was pointing in the air. He was shooting in the air. He was shooting in the air and shouting for the students to get away, to disperse, and shooting in the air. And then it was then that I asked Usman Baji whether he could ask him to stop doing that. Then Usman Baji told him to stop doing that, and he stopped doing it.
So this is another point that I would like you to clarify, because the Commission has received testimony that when Mr. Baji was asked to tell Momodu Cisse to stop shooting in the air, his response was different. He did not, in fact, order him to stop shooting. What is your recollection exactly of that situation?
My reaction is I was the one who told Usman Baji to tell Momodu Cisse to stop shooting in the air like that. And he did. Usman Baji did tell him to stop doing that. And
do you recall what exactly he said to Momodu? Is it Momodu Cisse or Momodu Baji?
Momodu Cisse. It was Usman Baji who told him to stop doing that.
And when Usman Baji told Momodu Cisse to stop doing that, what happened? Did he stop?
At that point he stopped doing it.
At that time, you said you also saw tear gas and there was pandemonium.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell us a bit more about the students, what was happening to them at that time? You said the PIU officers were also throwing stones.
Yes, they were running all over the place. They were not running away. They were running backwards and picking stones and then throwing them at the PIU officers. And some of the PIU officers were doing exactly the same thing. They were also picking stones and throwing them at the students.
At that point, did you see any other senior officials apart from Mr. Usman Baji?
Usman was the Minister of Interior. He was the one there, and besides Momodu, I did not see any other senior officers there at that time.
And can you remind us again around what time this was?
This must be around 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, yeah.
So please tell us what happened next.
It was at that point that I told Usman that I was not going to Banjul. I could not leave the students in that situation and go into Banjul for negotiations. I told him that I was going to concentrate on the students and make sure that they were okay. At that point, he bought the vehicle and the other student leaders got off the vehicle and they all came and joined me, and we started trying to organize the students so that we could get them backward, to move away from the PI office, so that we could talk to them to go home, so that we could also proceed to go on to Banjul and continue with the negotiations.
Up until that point, apart from the PIU men, were any other security forces present on the scene?
No, there were no other security forces at that point.
Can you tell us what happened after that?
From that point, we started. What we actually did was we stood between the students and the security officers and started moving the students towards Westfield Junction. That way, we moved that way up to Westfield Junction. When we got to Westfield Junction, we addressed them and told them to go home so that we could go to Banjul. It was at Westfield Junction while we were trying to, but all along, while we were taking the students that way, the PIU officers were following us. They were also following us. By the time we got to the Westfield Junction, um, Babukar Jata, the Army Chief of Staff, came. And when he arrived at the scene, he came straight to me and asked me, Omar, what do you think we should do? I said to him, withdraw the paramilitary officers. I said, withdraw the paras. And he also did the same thing. He withdrew the paras, and the moment he withdrew the paras, the students became less active, and we were able to address them. And at that point, some of the students started going home.
So from what you've said, when Babukar Jata gave the order to the PIU, meaning a different security outfit, they complied with his order for them to withdraw. Is that correct?
Yes, they did. Apparently, yeah.
Okay. And at that point, were there any other security forces around the Westfield Junction area?
No, they were not.
Can you tell us what happened next?
Now, we told those students to go home, and but while we were standing there at Westfield Junction, we saw a truckload of soldiers coming from the Bakau end and going to the PIU headquarters. And they passed by, they came through us, the crowd, and then information also at the same time while we were at Westfield Junction that students from Kotu and Bakote were coming towards the bridge. And we discussed and decided that the president of the University Students Union, Aliu Davo, should go with Babukar Jata in Babukar Jata's vehicle to meet those students so that he could speak with them and tell them not to come into Sarakunda, that we had everything under control. Now, parted, and instantly we also got information that some of the students who were at GTTI when we were being arrested had mobilized and were moving towards the PIU headquarters. So it was decided that those of us who were there should go to that point in DIGP badges of vehicle so that we could do exactly what we were doing throughout the day, that is to go and stand between the students and the officers to stop, to prevent a conflict.
You've mentioned the presence of DIGP Sankumbaji, or was it just his vehicle? I want that to be clear.
DIGP Sankumbaji, yeah. And in fact, what we did was we had asked for his vehicle, but he said he was not going to leave his vehicle with us, so he was going to move along with us.
Apart from him, you mentioned Babukar Jata as well. Were there any other senior officials present at the Westfield Junction area at that time?
No, I can remember only these two because I spoke with them.
And can you tell us what time it was when you decided to go back towards the GTTI area?
It must be after 12 by then. Yeah, around 12 noon.
You mentioned the soldiers who were coming. Did the soldiers do anything, or did you not wait for their arrival?
They passed us at Westfield Junction. They came from Bakau N on Karaba Avenue, came through Westfield Junction and turned into going towards the PIU office.
So can you tell us what happened next after you went with DIGP Sankumbaji?
Yes, we went with IGP Sankumbaji, but the students could not recognize us, but they saw the police vehicle. So when they saw the police vehicle, they started throwing stones at it. Then we diverted after the Canopy Municipal Council fence. The vehicle turned into that side street. There was a broken fence at the back of the PIU office, headquarters, the compound. Then he went onto the compound through that broken fence. The vehicle was taken into the compound through that broken fence.
Can you tell us what happened as the vehicle reached the compound?
When we got into the compound, then we got out of the vehicle and started moving towards the entrance. Like our plan, like I said, our plan was to go and stand between the students and the officers. It was while we were moving towards the gates that there was all of a sudden a barrage of, like gunfire, all of a sudden. And then Sankumbayi said to us, "Those are live ammunition." So when he said that, he left us there with his driver and they went away. So we were there and the firing continued for some time. While we were there, some PIU officers came with guns and put us at gunpoint and forced us to leave the premises.
Just to be clear, do you recall where that live ammunition, that shooting came from? From who or which security outfit?
I wouldn't know because we were not seeing them. We were inside the compound.
And then at that point, it was the PIU officers who came, held you at gunpoint, you and your other colleagues, and told you to leave the premises. Correct.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened next?
Then we left. That was it. That we left. At that point, we realized that our limited peaceful demonstration had been disrupted, and the initiative had been taken out of our control. So we went away and regrouped. We started making contacts with the other members of the student leadership, and we regrouped somewhere in I think it was somewhere in Josuang, the other Josuang, not New Josuang.
Up until that point, were you aware of any persons or any students who were either injured or killed as a result of live ammunition?
No, we were not. I was not aware.
Can you tell us what happened next after that?
We regrouped. We went into the hiding and we started monitoring the situation from where we were, and things got worse. And we determined that we should spend the rest of that day in hiding. So we spent the rest of that day in hiding, and while we were monitoring the situation, we were out scouts. The people who were around us and were not members of were not actively members of the central executive, went out and bringing back information to us. In the evening, we decided to disperse. But before we dispersed, it was suggested that I should not go home, and that was it. I did not go home, but I went to in Sarakunda to stay with friends for that night, and the rest also went away. That was around 10 p.m.
You said that while you and your group were monitoring the events, it became worse. What do you mean by that?
It was then that we heard about the death of the journalist cum Red Cross volunteer Omar Baro. We had that, and we also had that some students had been killed.
So can you tell us what happened the next day on the 11th of April?
Um, throughout that night, some people who visited my home informed me that there were um, people who were not in regular uniform were constantly on to my house and checking in my house, and then it was felt all the more that it was not safe for me to go home. Then the next day, around 7 o'clock, I left.
Where did you go?
I went to Senegal.
Can you tell us whether well, let me start again. You received information that there were people going to your home looking for you. Do you know if anything happened to your family members who were at the house?
No, nothing happened to them because at the time my wife was 8 months pregnant. Nothing happened to them.
So the next day you fled to Senegal. Can you tell us for how long you remained in Senegal?
I remained in Senegal for a little over 2 years before I proceeded to Canada.
During the time that you were in Senegal, were you aware that a commission of inquiry had been established to look into the the April 10 and 11?
Yes, I was aware. Yes,
did you at any point?
Because
yes, please continue.
I was aware, but while it was on, I generally protested through the media and offered myself to give testimony through other means other than being physically present, because at that point we were not sure. I was not sure of that they could provide enough security for me at the time. But my offer was not accepted. I could not remember them responding to my offer.
Did you at any point receive any kind of subpoena from that commission?
No, I cannot remember receiving a subpoena from them. No, I did not.
You've mentioned that while you were in Senegal, a concern that you had was your security. Can you tell us if there are any incidents that occurred in Senegal that made you more security conscious, so to speak?
Yes, at some point we got up to a point. I started thinking about getting a job in Senegal and trying to live a normal life there. But two incidents happened. The first one was one day I was at RADO's headquarters, which was also my home. That's where I was staying, because I could get permanent 24/7 security.
Perhaps
Usman
not everyone would know what RADO is. Can you just tell us what RADO is?
RADO it's a human rights organization. It's an organization in Senegal, in Dakar, and it has actually had branches all over the country. It has regional branches throughout Senegal. So they hosted me. Now,
so you were
one
staying
day
at
I
the
was
premises.
at the and all of a sudden, I was staying at the premises. Yes, that was also my home.
What about the rest of your family? You mentioned that your wife was 8 months pregnant when you crossed over to Senegal.
No, they stayed in the Gambia. My family joined me the last 6 months of my stay in Senegal.
So please continue. You were telling us about the two incidents that occurred in Senegal.
Yeah, I was at RADO's headquarters, and Usman Sow came there. Usman then used to be a colleague of mine at the university. I very well remember when we did commercial load, and we were actually sharing desks. He came and said he was in Dakar to seek spiritual assistance from a marabout, and but that was not convincing to me, because to me Senegalese normally would go to Gambia to seek for spiritual assistance from marabouts like that. A Gambian going to no other place but Dakar to look for spiritual assistance, that was not convincing.
Can you tell us which
So
Usman Sow you're referring to? Where is he presently?
Usman Sow is presently the director of the National Security Services in the Gambia.
And do you know the name of that agency or that?
Is it NSS, National Security Service? It used to be NIA though.
Indeed. Okay, so the security for the intelligence service that used to be called NIA.
Exactly. It used to be called it used to be National Intelligence Agency, NIA. So I was being very careful in this. I did not want to contact any of my family members or any of my friends at the university to ask them about Usman. So I called Mr. Boris Divani, and I asked him, "Do you know Usman Sow?" He said, "Yes." But I asked, "Do you know where he works?" He said, "He works for the NIA. He's an NIA officer." I said, "Okay." But I didn't tell Boris what was going on. I just got that information. Then I reacted, I mean, like in the necessary way, in terms of having security around me. And he kept coming for days. Sometimes he would come. He would ask me generally about the student demonstration, and I explained to him as much as I could. Then one day, he called me from wherever he was and said his marabout wanted to see me the following day. So I said to him, "Okay, you can come for me tomorrow. Before you come, please call me and let me know that you will come in." And obviously I had always informed my host about his comings and goings, and I told them what his status was, what his work was. And when he called me and told me that, I told them that again. So they instructed me not to receive his call the next day. So he called the next day. He was told that he could not see me again.
And what do you believe Mr. Usman Sow's intention was?
At that point in time, everybody believed that he was trying to kidnap me.
What led you to that
That's
conclusion?
Because why would he started by lying that he had gone to Senegal to see a marabout. He never told me that he was working for the National Intelligence Agency. And so things did not just add up. And why would his marabout want to see me?
Thank you very much for that explanation. You mentioned that there was a second incident. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, there was a second incident that was in connection with a lady called Kurambisan. Kurambisan used to be the wife of the legendary Kora player Lalo Keba Drame. He later married the late Jali Yankuba Sao. So when he was married to Jali Yankuba Sao, when she was married to Jali Yankuba Sao, they used to come to Bakote at a place where I used to hang out with my friends at my late uncle Karamba farm, because we used to woo there. So that it was then that I actually knew the person Kurambisan, because it was like we were almost living in the same compound. When she was there, she would visit with her. And while I was in Dhaka at Rado, some other Gambian refugees used to come with me, and we would be sitting on the street out there, and she would pass by in Salimina Drame's vehicle, and Salimina Drame then was supposed to be the security attaché at the Gambia embassy in Dakar. So I had already seen her, I had already known her, but she also arrived and explained herself in a completely different way. She said she was a foreigner. She did not tell me her name. She told me she was a foreigner in Dakar, and she was staying at a hotel, and she was given some money from Germany to give to Alaji Kante. So she asked me whether I had seen Alaji Kante. I said to her, yeah, I saw him when he first came into this city, but since then I have not seen him. So we chatted there, and then we went outside Rado. We were still talking, and she asked me to take her. I said, take you to BOSS. She said, yes. BOSS, BOS is acronym for a social services office for refugees in Dakar. So it was in the same neighborhood that I live, but it was up the road. I said to her, I cannot go to BOSS with you, but if you want, I can get people to take you to BOSS. She said, no, she wanted me. She wanted me to take her to BOSS. I disagreed, and we were there pushing and pulling, and then some people started coming out of the street that led to BOSS. And one of them was a guy that I know, in fact, a cousin of mine, who came and then recognized me and said, yeah, I know this guy. This is Omar Joof, Mambatin. That's how those people used to call me. And that was the end of that too. What Rado did in connection with that one with her was to, because we didn't know why she wanted me to take her to BOSS when there were some Gambian youths there, and one of them knew me. So that made it very suspicious. We thought she was also trying to get me into something, perhaps trying to kidnap me. So what Rado did in connection with that was to send some officials to her home, and they warned her to stay away from me.
Mr. Joof, thank you for that explanation. You mentioned in relation to both incidents that your belief is that maybe they were trying to kidnap you. Had you heard of any
Yes.
Any Gambians being kidnapped? Why was that the main thing that came to your mind?
That was what came to my mind, and I did not, because at that point I already become a refugee in Senegal, so it was incumbent upon me to report those incidents to the officials. And when I went to the Senegalese Ministry of Interior and explained the scenario to them, they advised to be very careful because I could be kidnapped like that.
Thank you for that explanation. Were you aware of the fact that while you were in Senegal, one of the conditions from ex-President Jammeh was that you be removed as president of GAMSU? Were you aware of that?
I was not quite aware of it until later, when students from GAMSU came to Dakar. Students from the executive came to Dakar to have a meeting that was to prepare for our Congress with me. That was when they informed me.
As we all know, you remained as president of GAMSU until the expiration of your term. Before I conclude my questioning,
Yes.
Can you just tell us what the impact was on you and your family, having gone through the events of April 10 and 11? Well, April 10th in your case, but also what happened to you in the end and the fact that your family only joined you 6 months later. Can you tell us the impact of this entire incident on your life?
Personally, I think it was devastating, because at the student leadership level, we were not interested in having a demonstration. We just wanted to use dialogue to solve our problems with the students, with the authorities. But they made it so impossible for us to reach agreements. And when there was a chance for an agreement between us, they flatly refused to commit themselves to an agreement. So it had a great impact on me, in the sense that we were not expecting the kind of carnage and the destruction and the loss of life that came out of it, because we organized, we unplanned for a limited peaceful demonstration, and that's why an important part of that demonstration was to station the students on GTTI premises. I got taken away from my family, as I have said personally. My wife was 8 months pregnant at the time, and I think this is true of not only me but most of the student leaders. Most of us were in the final year of our studies. Personally, there was nothing of interest in organizing a demonstration like that for me personally. I was in the 3rd year of university. I had a government scholarship. My CGPA was 4.0. I was in the best of places anybody studying could be at the time. But April 10, 11 came and disrupted every aspect of that. I cannot compare that with the loss of life. And normally I am at very great pains to explain these personal things that I had to go through. But we also have to remember that the guns that were used to shoot the students and kill them were initially meant for us, the student leadership, because the authorities knew that throughout that morning we were standing between the students and the officers. So there is, and even after the carnage, after the death, some of us, our parents, our families were told to look for our bodies at mortuaries. So it's something that we had never anticipated. We had looked for that, and it just came on us that one fine day. Personally, I was very much part of my community. I was like the type of person you would find in every aspect of his community. I was a youth leader. I was in sports. I was in religion. I very well remember when I became the first time I became a member of the Central Mosque Committee in my community. People were saying I was young to man that position. There had never been in my life at any time during my academic career that I did not do well. So it was a havoc that came on me. It took me away from my family, and I cannot explain in terms of words. There are no words to explain how much devastating it was on me and my colleagues and my family and everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joof. I know that you have a few more things you would like to say, and the chairman will give you an opportunity to make some closing remarks. But thank you very much for answering my questions. I have concluded. Mr. Chairman, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Council, and thank you, Mr. Joof. Extraordinary story. The moving around, the suffering here, family getting affected. It's incredible, really. Sorry about the suffering and the difficulties that were imposed on your family. Sorry about that. Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. If not, Mr. Joof, if you have any closing remarks, please proceed to make them now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for giving this platform and opportunity. This is something that me and my colleagues have looked forward for almost 2 decades. At some point, we thought that justice was never going to come our way. And I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to say a few words. First of all, I would like to respond to those who had always said that we were motivated by political ends. I have already said that all my colleagues in the student leadership, if you go after them and check them records, you will see that they were top of their classes. It was a group of friends that were committed to academic work, and they were doing well in school. I can remember way back during my tenure as president of the Gambia College Students Union, Gambia College Students Main Union. We were dubbed then by the administration as the best student leadership the college had ever had since it moved from Yundum to Brikama. And we had always been result oriented in terms of our activism. I will explain that at Gambia College we were able to advocate and had the Gambia School of Nursing renovated. The School of Public Health then, which was located on Marina Parade, was very bad conditions. But through our advocacy work, the school was completely relocated to Gambia College and put in brand new buildings. We also advocated and worked hard to have a mosque at Gambia College, so that students would not go all the way in town to get to go to the mosque. When we took over GAMSU, we came up with things that completely captivated our attention. We initiated support and potentially for girls' education in upper basic school. If anybody ever tells you that Omar and his colleagues were bad students, tell them to show the result, the evidence. We came up with those ideas, and we were able to convince the Minister of Education herself, Mrs. Anne Teres Ndongjata, to have monthly meetings with us so that we could deal with student welfare and issues. Our GAMSU Trust Fund became a big example, something that really attracted them, and that was the reason that I was made to go to a conference in Paris. I was selected to go on a conference which a student leader had never got in the Gambia, as far as I can remember. So we had those projects, and we were concentrating very much on those projects. The Ministry of Education itself accepted to have us collect money from our membership to the tune of $1 from every student. We wanted to gather at least $100,000, put up a fund of $500,000 so that Gambian students would not depend on anybody for the sponsorship of their activities anymore. So we had a lot on our plate. And so this demonstration and everything, this were, to put it rightly, it was a terrible distraction to us. So those who would say that we did this for any other reasons, they are wrong. They are totally wrong, and they would never have evidence to the point that to back their accusations. That's what I will. That is my response to those who accuse us of having had ulterior motives to go on the demonstration. To the parents of the students that were massacred, we would like to convince you. We would like to convince you that we are here for you forever. You can whatever we can do for you, for your children, and for you yourselves, we are ready to do it, and we will always make ourselves available to you. And to the victims that are still in pain, we say endure. Thanks to God, there are other Gambians who are willing to assist you and to assist all of us to make sure that your welfare is taken care of. To the government of the Gambia, this is what I have to say. It is you have a good advantage to build up a good relationship with every one of us. The best way to do that is to turn your attention to the welfare of the victims of April 10th, 11, and give them the assistance that they need. To the security officers in the Gambia, I would say this: students and civilians are not your enemies, unlike what the Jammeh dictatorship was teaching you at your during your trainings. Students are not your enemies. Civilians are not your enemies. We are all brothers and sisters. But the fact of the matter is, your policing culture is antiquated. It is anachronistic. It's about time that you looked at it, to change it, to make it conducive, to make it effective in an independent Gambia that is made up of sovereign citizens. To my fellow students and other young people, I will tell you this: the sky is the limit. You should dream as big as you want to dream. Nobody can stop you, and don't think that the lack of resources is a handicap to you. Your intelligence, your energy, your creativity, your innovations can make you overcome anything. And please do not use. There is a purpose for demonstrations, so do not use demonstrations for the wrong purpose. Demonstrations provide a platform for the where you can publicize your grievances and your issues. So if the demonstrations are not peaceful, you will not be. It will not be effective in terms of highlighting your grievances and your problems. Let us work together with the security forces. Let the security forces reach out to young people. Let them reach out to students and make sure that a harmonious relationship built between us and the rest of society. This is something we can all learn from April 10th, 11, 2000. And finally, this is what I have for all of you Gambians. The Gambia is all we have, and let us not destroy the Gambia. Let us try to build the Gambia. And we can build the Gambia, but we have to eat. We should not leave each other behind. We should all have patience. We should all be tolerant, and then the Gambia will be able to be the coast of Africa again. I thank you all for your attention, opportunity that I have been waiting for almost 2 decades. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you very much, TRRC. Thank you very much, compatriots and friends of the Gambia.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Joof, for those closing remarks, as well as for your testimony. Council, I understand before we come to a close, you have an announcement to make. If you do, can you please proceed to do so now?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving me this opportunity. It has come to the attention of the Commission that a witness who has testified recently is receiving threatening text messages from a member of the public. I just wish to indicate that such activities are criminal offenses. It is an interference with with a witness of the commission, but not only that, a threat to anybody is a crime under the laws of the country and should be prosecuted. I just wish to assure this person and the members of the public that these threatening text messages would be investigated, and I do hope that the culprit would be discovered and arrested and prosecuted. But more importantly, I just wish to inform the public that they must desist from these activities. The witnesses who appear before this commission are doing a service to our people. They are answering to the call of the nation to come and provide truthful accounts about events that are of great concern to all of us, which are being investigated. Therefore, these people, no matter how we feel or whatever we feel about their testimonies, these people should not be threatened. In fact, they should be protected. So, again, I call on everybody not to take the law in their own hands and to desist from such activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emma Council, for that reminder. We will meet again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock sharp. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.